Yeah. So I just want to say I'm hugely honored that you have me here. I'm a newcomer. I don't know what I've gotten myself into, but y'all do, and I've had some astounding conversations already today, and I have a whole lot to learn. So the best I can do, because I've been asked to talk, is to talk you through some of my thoughts so that then you can connect with them and you can, just see how what you're doing goes with what I'm saying, and also you can fix what I'm saying about conversation. So what I want to talk about is a philosophical context for conversation, to see if I can locate it for myself, this phenomenon of conversation that you all are having, so giving a little thought to that. So conversation needs a kind of a setting or a shape. It seems to me these things seem obvious. It's not exactly constructed out of thin air, although I think that our age tends to say, well, it is, constructed out of thin air. Obviously, a conversation needs participants. It needs some level of intimacy for it to be a conversation and not a fight, for example. It needs a place and time, and it seems like it ought to be toward a certain end, and it seems like it ought to be enjoyable and meaningful. And by the way, that's my front porch, so if you have read Doorway to Artistry, that's where the first conversation takes place. So, but I also think that the idea of conversation, or a particular conversation that we might have, is shaped by implicit views about reality and how we're involved in it, for better or for worse. So I'd like to explore the venture of conversation, drawing on my own philosophical approach to knowing and reality, which justifies and enhances the significance of what we do in our conversation together. And I'm working especially from the book Doorway to Artistry. Like I said, I brought books there for sale, 25% off there. You can Venmo me with the QR code. You can sign up to subscribe and be an ERF, which is Esther's Readers and Friends. So I do love acronyms, given that I was born in the 1950s. So, okay. Anyway, so I am a philosopher, though I know I don't fit whatever your stereotype of that might be. But I also think philosophizing is for all of us. So these are just a few slides on what I think philosophizing is. I think it's making sense of all of life. I think it's at the core of who we are as humans. And as I write at the bottom, there's one thing you need to be philosophical, and that's to have been born, because humans just do this. I think philosophizing permeates all that we live, all of our lives and everything that we do. And to live is actually philosophizing. I think philosophy is concrete, felt, bodily lived. I think it's every day and it's for everyone. And it shouldn't just be the rock musicians that do philosophy in the street. And the cool thing about philosophizing is when you're talking about it, you're philosophizing. So that's pretty neat. So anyway, the fundamental questions that get asked in philosophy are these, and I propose that you can't take a step in life without, presuming some sort of response to all of these. One is, who the heck are we? That's called philosophical anthropology. Another is, what is reality? So that gets called metaphysics. How we understand it, that has to do with knowing. That's epistemology. And then what the heck are we to do? So how we are involved in reality, in bringing it in and also responding to it, are philosophical matters. I think the Western modern age is inherently anti-philosophical. It's an anti-philosophical philosophy because philosophy is deemed not practical, right? So what I think our era does is actually deprive us of our philosophical birthright and also of the resources to nurture it. And what it does, because this is what modernity is, it's kind of a philosophical definition, and we'll talk about that, it downloads implicit philosophical baggage that messes up everything. And so it calls for what I call philosophical therapy, because it's not just an information fix you need, it's something that is a reforming of you down to your core. And it's something that if you're born in the modern West or have any connection with it, you need in some form or other.
Well, for most of my life, I've thought of my philosophizing as beginning at age 13 with these questions. One is, how do I know that God exists? And the other is, how do I know that anything exists outside my mind? So I was I grew up a Bible-believing Christian. I knew what I thought I was supposed to know about the Bible, but I still had this question about how can I really know that God exists? And then really the larger question is, how do I know that there's anything outside of my head? So I had this presumption that I was certain about the ideas in my head, but precisely because I had these ideas in my head, they were blocking me from reality. And so I had no contact with reality, and that struck me as a big problem. So I did feel like I had this picture in my head. And so the picture was, here I am in here, so me in here, there's a world out there, I think, but really what I'm in touch with is information, and the information is blocking me from reality. So me in here, world out there, and the knowledge, however I took the knowledge to be, would be information that was kind of a screen. Well, as once I figured out that you could study philosophy, it didn't take me long to feel like that was what I was morally obligated to do because of these questions that I had. And I found that really the picture in my head began with the father of modern philosophy, René Descartes, who said about the me in here that really the absolute anchor of certain knowledge is my solitary disembodied mind, okay? And what's out there would be mindless, it would be impersonal, it would be objects, not subject. That included his body. And if you happen to be not on the rationalist side of things, but on the empiricist side, like a John Lockean, you're not even sure what's out there. So certain I know not whats are out there. And what info was for Descartes was ideas in my mind. What it was for John Locke was sensations. But in any case, there was this screen. For me, it was Esther in here, world out there. How can I know anything at all? And the fact is I have no contact with reality, which struck me as a problem. I mean, I'm an existential problem, a real problem. It seems strange to me. I thought these questions were sin, but I had no proof. And it seemed like everything seemed to have something to do with that. So that set me on my philosophical quest. Here are some books. Somehow I came away without any copies of Contact with Reality. I'm sorry about that, but you can pick up there's some bookmarks out there you can get too. See, there's the little guy, 2023, because Longing to Know. See, there's the first little guy.
You didn't get one.
Yeah, so stickers, have a sticker. So anyway, there was a philosopher in the 20th century, famous philosopher named Ludwig Wittgenstein, who was given to wonderful aphorisms, and one of them is, a picture held us captive. And the picture he had in mind was just this picture, me in here, world out there, information there. It still holds us captive because this is modernity's implicit philosophy. And one of the things I learned as I got into philosophy was that it wasn't just my problem, that everybody in modernity had some problem like this that they were running into. So when I talk about the modern age, I just lifted this off the internet, but it's a period of time. The main thing is it's been prevailing since the 17th century, and I think it's only growing stronger. And really a key paradigm for it is human mastery over nature. We can change that to male mastery over nature. Present company accepted. I'm not referring to you particularly, but it does seem to be a male-dominated sort of a way of looking at things. Not male as you are, but male as modernity plans it to be. It's also, I would like to say, white. So, but the idea of pragmatic utility as king. So in one of my books, I call this Modernity's Knowledge as Information Mindset. And by the way, I don't think of myself as an expert in the history of philosophy. I'm really more interested in how y'all or my neighbors, how the ideas how they come to expression, in ordinary life, because I think that's important. And sometimes it's a mistaken version, but it's the one that's in play. So I try to talk to people in the street, and so please don't take me as an expert on modernity, for example. So what I'm saying in this knowledge as information mindset is that people in modernity have a kind of a paradigm of what true knowledge is, and they tend to say it's information. If you were to ask your neighbor, well, what kind of an animal is knowledge? Would they not say information? So information. So hidden presumptions about who we are, what is real, and how we're involved in it is this knowledge as information mindset. I know this is an old picture, but I like the dazed look in his eye. And also, they thwart all that we are and do. It just plays out in every discipline and walk of life. And it might be not something you've thought about, but something that you feel. So you can feel it intellectually, you can feel it spiritually, psychologically, artistically, physically, culturally, and I do think that philosophy is felt. I really do. So the paradigm in the knowledge as information mindset would be that information is the philosophical ideal of knowledge. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with information. I'm saying it's a philosophical ideal that I want to address. So, yay, information, facts, we want linearity, we want it to be impersonal. We privilege the bits, not the whole, so bits are always better. So you want to reduce and analyze and split to the end of certainty for power and control, because knowledge is power. We want it transferable, we want it commodifiable, we want it scalable. Okay? So there's 5 million slides I've taken out of this, believe it or not. But this whole kind of divorce of me and here and world out there plays out in lots of ways all over modernity. But one way it plays out nowadays is there's no me in here and there's no world out there. It's just the information. Okay? And so we do speak of the information age, and we think of knowledge as information. Well, just cutting to the question of conversation at this moment, if all there is information and there is no me in here particularly, or I'm just my Facebook page or whatever, and I'm not sure out there, or whatever, I'm not connected out there, then what you've got for conversation is just kind of this interrelating of information that's going on in kind of a vacuum. Well, there's all kinds of baggage from modernity. Here's a couple of artists' boo words. I like to talk about yay words and boo words when I'm teaching philosophy, because you've got to figure out how somebody's saying a word before you know whether, how they feel about it. So try to teach Nietzsche to students who have their only use of the word decadent is chocolate. Right? Decadent's a boo word for Nietzsche. So anyway, Makoto Fujimura in his Culture Care book, these are boo words for him. This is just baggage of modernity. He speaks of it as being toxic, not the soil that an artist can thrive in. Wendell Berry, I've just lifted all these words. They're pretty glaringly obvious in remembering, which Hannah King, stand up, Hannah. They all need to know you. She was my student at seminary down in Dallas, and I bet remembering was your extra book. I think you did remembering. I'm just nothing to put you on the spot or anything.
I don't remember.
Hannah is a rector in Clyde, which is 5 minutes down the road at the Vine Anglican. So she popped in to say hello, so you need to know her. I'm a fangirl of D.C. Schindler. And in Love and the Postmodern Predicament, he writes about a crisis in contemporary existence, a crisis that can be described as a loss of a sense of reality. which inevitably entails as its counterpart a dissolution of the self. And he speaks of modernity as largely a conspiracy to protect us from the real. So those are fighting words. We got a problem. So what's wrong with this picture? Well, I would like to say that focal information actually blocks and blinds us to the real, and that includes ourselves. And I'm proud to have been able to have studied philosophy with Marjorie Green, who was the philosopher that Michael Polanyi thanks for every page of personal knowledge. And one of her great one-line zingers is the cogito, which is this picture, me and here and the world out there, is one of the greatest falsehoods of Western philosophy. I love that line. So how are we actually involved with the world? So do you recognize this picture? Anybody? Yes.
I have young children, so
Yes. So what is it?
it's from Make Way for Ducklings, and the mother duck is looking for a nice, safe place to settle down,
Yeah,
and then that horrid thing
right.
comes flying by.
So Robert McCloskey does the best charcoal prints, 1940s, so Make Way for Ducklings and other books. But I've named him Mel, because he's going pell-mell. And yes, the ducks are right off here trying to get out of the way. So what I want to talk you through is how this guy, Michael Polanyi, says knowing actually works. And don't be scared, because guess what? You've been doing this all your life. You just need a little help seeing maybe what you've been doing. So when we ask how do we come to know, how knowing works, see that I'm going to talk to you about what we're already doing when we know. For example, bike riding. So Michael Polanyi, I was very glad to find his work early on because I had this existential problem. So I was in my early 20s when somebody handed me a copy of this book. And he was a premier scientist, physical chemist, the beginning of the 20th century, in conversation with Albert Einstein and other names you'll recognize. And what he said was, look, my job is discovery, and he's credited with over 30 discoveries. But what he did was he kind of left science to do philosophy. So Nobel Prize winners came out of his lab, but it wasn't he, including his son, but he didn't, because he went off to do some philosophy. But he said, look, my job is about discovering, which means it's about how do you come to know. Right? And so in the lingo of philosophy of science of the 20th century, you know, this is context of discovery, not context of explanation. So people interested in certainty have, focused on making sense of explanation, when really what you need is to figure out how do you come to know in the first place. So coming to know. And he said if knowledge is explicit focal information, no scientific discovery could ever happen. But it does. So fix your epistemology. Fix it so it goes with what you're doing when you're moving from not yet knowing to knowing. And so he said all knowing is subsidiary focal integration. Those are the three biggest words I'm using today, and I'm going to teach them to you in the next slides. So he actually said this. This is amazing. When you asked a best example of knowing, he would say a good problem, or he'd say the sense of an approaching discovery. Isn't that fantastic? I just got chills. The sense of an approaching discovery. Now that just sets on end everything you might have been thinking about certainty. And this is not conventionalism, it's not mysticism, it's not religious particularly, it's maybe being skilled so that you've got a good sense of what's coming, right? All knowing as subsidiary focal integration. All right, here's the long version. We're going to talk it through in the next slides. But integration, you could say, is creative, integrative scrabbling. Subsidiary involves indwelling and relying on clues. Focal is you shape or focus on an irreducible pattern that you then submit to as grasping an aspect of reality, and it comes along with this beautiful, unspecifiable sense of indeterminate future possibilities. So all-knowing is creative, integrative, it's not linear, scrabbling to indwell and rely on clues. Think about the word clue. It's a half understanding. To shape or spy, focus on an irreducible pattern. That's a pattern that's irreducible to any of the subsidiaries or the clues or the parts, which we submit to as grasping an aspect of reality. And it comes with this, I call it the IFM effect, this sense of future possibilities that you can't name. So all-knowing is from, to, and beyond. There's 2 layers, from and to, and then the world opens in possibilities. In Longing to Know, it's a book for people considering Christianity who have questions about knowing, as I did, as I think most of us could count as considering Christianity. We're all kind of could be on the way to being better believers, right? Or we're not yet believers or something. But what I needed to justify my Christianity to myself was to see that knowing God was an example of ordinary knowing. Okay? So the driving analogy in there is that knowing God is like knowing my auto mechanic. Hence the little guy. Okay? He's really an auto mechanic. So one story I tell in there, by the way, there are 2 indie rock albums devoted to my work. One is named Esther, and one of the pieces, one of the bands on it is called The Copperhead. So in here, I was living in St. Louis on the edge of this woody bluff, and we had just moved into this house, and my older little girls came running in saying, "Mommy, Mommy, come look." And they took me out into the verge of the woods, and they said, "Look!" Well, I saw the leafy woodland floor. But we had been to a little boy's birthday party recently that had been at the nature center. And the guy had explained, this is the authoritative guy, and he said, there's 2 poisonous snakes in the state of Missouri. One of them is a copperhead, and you know it's a copperhead because of the Hershey kisses on his back. Well, you don't see Hershey kisses so well on this guy. But I looked down, and as I was looking, I saw a pattern of Hershey kisses. And my world turned upside down. Okay? And when I saw that snake, he was looking at me. He was there. And he had been looking at me all along. Right? And here's my 3 merry little girls, and here's Mom freaking out. So, anyway, that's the story of seeing a pattern, right? As it steps back from the other things you were looking at, and it changes your world, right? So perception is subsidiary focal integration. Well, any kind of skilled performance is subsidiary focal integration too. And I think skill examples are great. You just want to think about something that you do commonly, like driving a car. I'm going to talk to you about bike riding, but let me tell you the story about me learning to ride a bike. My father wanted me to learn to ride a bike, and he was very merry about the prospect. We were too poor for me to actually own a bike, so he borrowed one. It was too big for me. He didn't believe in training wheels. He took me and that contraption up to the top of the hill at the back of our yard, the grassy hill. And, I was looking at that and thinking no human being can balance on 2 points. But in any case, it was an alien contraption. He put me on the bike and he pushed me. He pushed me. And he yelled, "Balance!" Well, it's like, I'm a philosopher. What the heck does that mean? I didn't know I was a philosopher at the time, but, what does the word balance even mean when you haven't done it? So, he was the directions one of the things I realized in all of this is you've got this triadic thing going on. So some of the clues are the words of the authoritative guide, which, at the top of the hill, they were meaningless to me. Nevertheless, somehow I had to try to make sense of them. Then I had the situation, the world. Here I am on this grassy hill that I've got to navigate. And then, and the bike, was that part of the world at that point? It certainly wasn't part of my body. And my body was so opaque, it was useless. I had no idea what to do with my body. What happened, and I'm sure this is what he thought, and in a way, it might have been the best thing he could have done. He thought that by the bottom of the hill, I'd be riding. And then I would have integrated to the pattern, and his work would be done. I don't remember the bottom of the hill, but I do like to ride a bike. But somewhere along the line, when you're trying to figure it out, they do come together in what, in the perception idea, I call the oh, I see it moment, when I saw the copperhead. But there's an oh, I see it moment with a skill when those clues come together, and the pattern is this unfolding performance that goes on. And then what happens at that point is all the things you were focusing on at point A at the top of the hill, looking at that were senseless, come to marry with your body and become subsidiary. You look from them rather than at them, and the world opens up to you. Okay? So you want to go from looking at to looking through or looking from. And all skill works this way, and knowing is a skill. Okay? So here's a diagram I tried earlier. Actually, group 5, put the horizontal and vertical behind that check mark, and that's where the hint of the 4 dimensions of humanness I was referring to. What happens is when you get to the pattern, it transforms the clues that you were groping to half understand. So if you look at that check mark, you're doodling through life, kind of making sense of life, and all of a sudden the bottom falls out. And like in my case, the bottom fell out when my dad took me to the backyard, and then I've got to scramble to try to put things together. And there comes this moment, this aha moment, this breakthrough of insight. It's kind of like an epiphany or a revelation. It's transformative. And one of the philosophers I get this from calls it the knowing event. What happens is when you integrate to the pattern, it opens up to a new world and a kind of a new level of rationality. A new level. It's like, oh, I'm a bike rider. Oh, the possibilities, the places I can go, right? As a new world comes to you. So that green oval picks out this dynamic in knowing that if you think that knowledge is only information, you would have that totally eclipsed. You wouldn't see that as epistemically the heart of your knowing. So to review, 2 levels of knowing. There's the subsidiary and the focal. You attend from and attend to. Your job is not to get rid of the subsidiary, but to wear it artfully, right? And focus on a farther pattern. You rely on this. It's near to you, proximal, as opposed to what's farther away. It's something that you have to try to climb inside. So I had to climb inside, like, what does my dad mean when he says balance? My body had to work that out. Subsidiaries are unspecifiable, meaning you can't articulate them, you can't put them into words, or you're putting them into words is not what you're relying on to get you to the pattern, okay? So it's unspecifiable. It's supposed to be something that you can't put into words, and it's like the clues or the parts with regard to the whole, okay? From, to, and beyond. Okay, you ready for a experiment? Get your pencil and paper and write a sentence that's 5 words long. Any sentence, just 5 words. This lady is crazy. You can write, why am I doing this?
Ready? This is the great moment. Got your sentence? Take your writing implement, put it in the other hand, write the same sentence. Sweat and laugh and remember kindergarten and say, thank God for subsidiary focal integration. Because what you should see doing it with the other hand is, by contrast, all you learned. Right? What you find that you're doing is focusing. You have reverted to focus on the pen and on the paper and how much pressure you're putting it on and where your fingers are. All that stuff has just reverted to become focal. And it's very uncomfortable. Your body is not working out for you. Right? Okay, so take the writing implement, put it back in the correct hand, write the sentence a third time. Say, subsidiary focal integration. And feel how cool it is to hold the pen in your hand and feel the paper. If you're a fountain pen person, and, rag and content in your paper. Okay, subsidiary focal integration. You're really, really good at it. So, pell-mell, you see where his eyes are. They're looking down the road. Okay, he doesn't even see the ducks at this point. So what that involves is us indwelling. He's wearing the bike, relying on clues to shape, in this case, a performance, a skilled performance. That's his OIC at moment. And then it's a pattern that he submits to as a token of reality because it gets him places, okay? So what happens is his world opens up into possibilities. It's a new world and a world he wants to live in. All reading works this way, okay? Learning to read is going from focal to subsidiary, from looking at the page to looking from it, right? To Quidditch or whatever else you happen to be reading about. Meaning works this way. So for something to mean, you have to be subsidiarily indwelling something to focus on a pattern. All knowing is subsidiary focal integration. Nate, you see, I still haven't gotten up my courage to change the quarterback out. Where is it? Uh-oh. I just can't get over this.
That's the right quarterback.
Yeah. So far it seems that way. That is John Polanyi. So he won the Nobel Prize, kind of in his father's work. But, and I would say subsidiary focal integration is the very thing that not just challenges modernity's knowledge as information mindset, it actually dispels it. If you think about writing, bud, if you think about writing on your paper, it's like this us, themish nastiness, focal information can't connect with, well, you're just rooted in reality. This is what roots you in reality. So I really do think that modernity's defective mindset can be very quickly dispelled. Now, another thing to live that out. Here's the problem with focal information as a paradigm of knowledge. Because focal information, the knowledge as information mindset is focusing on what you should rely on, okay? It's looking at rather than attending from. It's staring, not wearing. Polanyi called it destructive analysis. It's valuable, but don't make it the paradigm. Don't make it permanent, and don't make it the paradigm of your epistemology. So what the knowledge as information mindset does is fixate focally on what should be subsidiary. So what happens if Mel looks down at his foot on the pedal? Well, he's liable to end up in the drain, right? So if you fixate on the foot on the pedal. In my case, if my father's words, if I fixated on them somehow, it would actually blind me to reality. And so what this knowledge as information paradigm does is disconnect us from reality. It blinds us. So one philosopher, Eleanor Stump, calls it myopia. We're literally blinded to and cut off from reality. Now, this is the definition I gave you early on about subsidiary focal integration, and what I want to say, and I say this in Doorway to Artistry, is the same definition works for the creative process. So the creative act and the act of discovery are effectively the same act, a creative, integrative scrabbling to indwell and rely on clues to shape and focus on a pattern which we then submit to as a token of reality. Who's telling me the end of this time frame? Anybody? It's 3:30 and we didn't get started till after 4:30, so I don't know how you're all doing, but that was round one. So I want to say, what about this idea that thoughtful conversations are subsidiary focal integration? What might that help us as we think about conversation? Moving on. When I was writing about this and wanting to know, there were some things that came to me. Like one of those things, and this goes with the conversation we were having in group 5, it's not as if reality answers your questions, it's more that it explodes them and asks questions of you. Okay? So it explodes more than explains. It's like all knowing is coming to be known. Somehow, reality precedes you. It changes you. It's got this abundant excess in all these indeterminate future possibilities that's actually what I wrote my dissertation on. The possibilities. Possibilities. So it began to dawn on me that there was something encounter-esque about the act of coming to know. So in the OIC at Moment, it was like a face-to-face encounter. And I was already using the example of the disciples on the road to Emmaus. Their eyes were opened in the breaking of the bread. And so I just kind of went intentional on that to create covenant epistemology. So what knowing is encounter with a person like real. I spend a lot of time in Loving to Know trying to make the case that reality is person-like. As a Christian believer, that's kind of obvious to me. The most real thing is, 3 and 1, and everything that's created is God's knickknacks, kind of, so they're all person-like, right? So reality is God and His stuff. So I tried to make a case for that, for there to be a grounding for thinking of knowing as an encounter with the yet to be known. So covenant epistemology, as I have called it, says that the best paradigm for knowing is not information, but it's the interpersonal, covenantally constituted relationship, actually best typified by Christ, Jesus Christ, knowing you redemptively, okay? Knowing is transformative, mutual encounter, knowing and being known. And actually, Loving to Know is a book of conversations. Here's some of the aphorisms from that book. We do not know in order to love. We love and pledge in order to know. The knower yet to be known relationship is person-like. I said all these things. I love these last two, though. These are like worth the price of the book. The goal of knowing is not certain, comprehensive information. The goal of knowing is ongoing communion with the real. And we were made to be lovers of the real. That's what we were made to be, right? So we're going for communion. It's more objective than information. Well, if reality is person-like, then best ways to get at knowing would be to invite it, like you would a person. So I call this an epistemological etiquette. That bird on my shoulder, that's the story in Loving to Know. I'll leave you to read it because of the time. But that's Bandit. But he was a cedar waxwing that should have looked like that. So my favorite chapter in there is chapter 15, which is called Inviting the Real. And these are I don't want you to read all these, but I'm going to talk you through a few of these. These are just practices that invite reality to come, okay? So obviously I'm going to say this is good for conversation too. Well, love, obviously. So R.T. Allen, who's a Christian philosopher in England, has written that Da Vinci said that every love is the daughter of a great cognition. He says, oh no. Actually, it's the other way around in Christian epistemology. Every great cognition is the daughter of love. And Annie Dillard, who really gives me the covenant and covenant epistemology, writes that it is the lovers who see. That's her muskrat. So stalking muskrats in Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, I realized that she was behaving to invite this muskrat to come. So pledge invites reality. You actually bind yourself covenantally to live life on the terms of the yet to be known. It takes responsible risk, it takes trust, sacrifice. I said in Longing to Know that knowing is like a wedding. You pledge to love, honor, and obey, and then if you're graced, reality self-discloses, right? So there's lots of things that you pledge. That's all in Little Manual for Knowing. So here's some of the cool practices, epistemic practices of inviting the real. And I have precious little left on this slide to show you. But the horse is Seabiscuit. You might have seen the movie or read the book. And so a key part of that is the trainer, whose name I can't remember. But he obviously was a horse whisperer, right? And so he has some communion, huh? Tom Smith. Tom Smith. Yeah, you're right. Thank you. His communion with that horse, it involves a calming down to be at home and be presence. Presence actually invites reality to come. I like this one. Put yourself in the way of knowing. You want to place yourself where reality is likely to show up. Well, the lithograph is Zacchaeus up in the tree, putting himself in the way of knowing, right? So if you want to know something, you might even take a train ride across the country to get to a lake in North Carolina, right? Because it's worth it to put yourself where reality is likely to show up. Here's one, choose wise guides. This F, whatever it is 16. There because of a former student, and I had him in seminary. It was a second career for him, and he said, tell them. So I'm doing this. He said, you cannot learn to fly at F-16 without authoritative guide. So there, I told you. And then Dancing with the Stars is learning to follow the authoritative guide to dance and win the Mirror Ball trophy. So Max was my favorite dancer back in the days when I was watching this. And what you saw is the star learning to live life on the terms of the yet to be known and choosing the wise guide. So here's the live life on the terms of the yet to be known. That's Dr. Byron Curtis, who was the Hebrew professor who was next door to me at Geneva, and I just always used to say to my students, if you want to learn Hebrew, you got to go to Dr. Curtis's class, and you got to do what he says. You have to trust him, and you have to live life on the terms of the yet to be known to invite it to come. That's what I was doing when I was taking care of this wild bird bandit, was trying to live life on his terms. Delight invites the real, and this is big in the new book, The Mother's Smile. David Bentley Hart writes that delight is the premise of any sound Christian epistemology. I'm not going to read all this wonderful stuff from Robert Farrar Capon. Do you know that book? You got to read it. It's called The Supper of the Lamb. He's got a 1 hour man onion event that you have to undergo. But I just love how he says, the world needs all the lovers, the amateurs it can get. And boredom is not neutral. It is the fertilizing principle of unloveliness. What the world needs is delight. What it needs is delight. Noticing regard, this is a great one, and this comes out in Mother's Smile as well. But regard, to notice someone with regard in your face invites that person to come.
Okay, so it's a regard for the other. I talk a lot about this in Loving to Know too. It's a conferring of dignity on the other. It's a creative attention. That line is Simone Weil's. So, and for me, I linked that when I first experienced it, I linked it with the woman at the well. I saw a face looking at me with noticing regard, and I thought, that is the face that the woman at the well saw on Jesus's visage as he looked at her. Here's a good one, active listening. Active listening invites reality to come. So a psychiatrist, Eugene Gendlin, says people don't have a story until you hear it into existence. And then I worked with John Stanley, who was doing this listening evangelism cafe, and the training was, point 1, you listen. Point 2, you listen. Point 3, you listen. And so my idea is you kind of listen until people tell their own story truly. You know how when those old pumps, you'd pump like this and all the crud would come out? But you keep pumping until the water runs clear. And so when people finally get so they tell the story truly, John would say they've saved themselves, right? So listening is an active thing that invites reality to come. Indwelling, obviously, is Michael Polanyi's word, but Nobel Prize-winning geneticist Barbara McClintock is known for saying that what we need to work with corn plants is a feeling for the organism, which is a respect for difference, sympathy. It allows intimacy without doing away with otherness. So you want regard for the other. You don't want to absorb the other, but you want intimacy. Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance, the way you fix a motorcycle is peace of mind. All that, I think, has something to do with good conversations. So thoughtful conversations involve inviting the real. How are you doing? Okay, I'm trying to be as entertaining as possible. So Doorway to Artistry actually is a book of hospitable welcome. That's my house on the front cover. And what I want to say is, you know, back in Loving to Know in 2011, I said we should invite the real. But you know what? Reality invites first. So reality is hospitably welcoming us. And what that inviting the real stuff is our hospitable reciprocating in kind. And that's the case in the creative process and also in discovery. So this book is an event of hospitable welcome to my house. It enacts reality and knowing, the real welcomes, and in discovery and artistry, we reciprocate the hospitality. So there's conversations, there's a picture for everyone. I wanted a philosophy book with pictures. And so this works through the creative process. On my front porch is a night blooming cereus. Has anybody ever heard of one? Yeah, oh, you would. What is it about you? That man. Well, anyway, it's a really ugly plant, and I inherited it. And my mother-in-law wanted me to have a cutting, so actually I got one off the ancestral plant after she passed away. But you know, you're looking at this ugly plant. It's like leaves grow out in strange places, and there's these nodes along the leaves, and things come out of the nodes. It might be a stem, or it might be another leaf, or sometimes it's a little Sputnik and has little things sticking up, and it gets bigger and bigger, and it's ugly, I'll tell you. And it gets to this size, and it's red and angry, and at this point it goes whoop, like this. And then it starts to go like this. And that's when you know that night it's going to bloom. So you grab your lawn chair and your flashlight and your neighbors and your camera, and you sit there and take pictures every 5 minutes. And literally, you can go to the internet and see people's videos of their night blooming cereus blooming. But when that opens, look at that. Have you ever seen anything more beautiful in your life? And so here I had this ugly plant, and it goes here I am. And I go, whoa. And then I go, oh. And then I go, I do, meaning I promise to love, honor, and obey this plant, this exotic plant, and I live not in exotic land, which means every fall I drag it down into the basement, and every spring I drag it back out, okay? In other words, this is an example of the sort of overture and response I have with reality, okay? Welcome, I'm not going to dwell on this too much because of time, but a welcome is a really sophisticated human act. It's just, I don't know, it's just so sophisticated. And it's great philosophy, okay? So to say, would you come with me to dinner? Or I'd like to invite you to come over to my house. Do you see that changes reality? It is incredible. It's formative of knowing and reality. So what happens is, as I welcome you into my home, what happens is you've got to reciprocate, right? And say, well, yes, I think I'll come, which takes a risk on your part. And you have to step into this half-understood world, right? And then somehow you have to compose yourself in my living room. You have to settle down to make yourself at home and compose yourself to expectant presence within my world. My job is to make you at home, so orient you to everything that you need so that you feel at home there. But you are really kind of at my behest, right, to comply with the welcome that I've invited you in. Don't be a nasty guest. You know, one way of being a nasty guest is, oh, I don't deserve to be here. That is so rude, right? What you want to say is thank you, right? One of the things I reflect on in Doorway to Artistry is in the creative process or the act of coming to know, any kind of something like that, like we're doing here, you don't have a beginning until you have an end. And you have the end as kind of this half-hidden glimmering that draws you. Okay, so that's the night blooming Sirius saying, here I am. And then you say, I do. I will follow where you lead, right? And so it's, even though we don't know what the end is, we talked about this, Karen, not back on your thing. You don't know in a painting what the end is, but somehow you're able to follow toward it, which is what Polanyi was saying. This is why you have to accredit things that you have to understand. Otherwise, no discovery would ever happen. So a beginning requires an end, but what happens is as we compose ourselves to expectant present, we can start to move toward that end. Well, at that point, I also talk about the first welcome, which I'm going to skip over, but this is the mother smile. To say, the point is, we are born into a welcome. Our first welcome was the welcome that we received when mother or somebody caught us as we came out the chute. So we're born into the most sophisticated interpersonal encounter possible. And out of that, I want to say, grows a natal philosophy. I'm going to skip ahead here because I am conscious of the time. I do want to say that if my Cartesianism started at age 13, there was an earlier philosophy, and it was the natal philosophy into which we all are born. Okay? The natal philosophy that says, here you are, welcome. And I would like to suggest that returning to that natal philosophy, again, dispels modernity's skewed presumptions. Here in the study upstairs, we're going to talk a little bit about things. This is kind of the main last thing I want to say because, and to say it very shortly, because I'm conscious of your time. One of the things that modernity gets wrong is not just the knowing, but also the reality. And in particular, what it does is it reduces reality to impassive, inert bits, okay? Whereas what we have is a lively world, okay? That responds and actually seeks us. Okay? So when I realized, I wasn't a baby skeptic, I was an adolescent onset skeptic, I began to realize that when I was a baby, I was exuberant about things. Okay? I love things. I still do. I love seashells. Can you figure that out? Okay. So in Philadelphia, that included Billy Penn and street sweepers and gasoline tanks and all those sorts of things. But I'm saying that out of the mother's welcome, this happy interchange with things happens where you would say, hello. That's what Billy Penn is saying up there is hello. And this is what I'm calling a metaphysics of childhood. So that means a way of viewing reality that's natural to the newborn baby. At the heart of that is this lively coming into being and saying, here I am. There's so much to talk about here that I'm not going to talk about. But essay is the Christian doctrine of creation. By the way, the fountain is at the point in Pittsburgh. Three Rivers, Pittsburgh. Guess what? There's a fourth river. And the fountain taps into the fourth river. It's an aquifer underneath. Isn't that so cool? So cool. Anyway, the Christian doctrine of creation is this gratuitous excess, this yes. Everywhere you look, your eyes land on a yes of God. Here, now, yes, welcome, yes, welcome. Gratuitous excess, inexhaustive depths and abundance, and it's lively. So, Hans Urs von Balthasar writes, there is no such thing as a passive object. Lively things, I call them everyday jewels of the real, disclose themselves. They say, here I am, at your service. They show themselves. They give themselves. They say themselves. Beauty, goodness, and truth. Rowan Williams, Archbishop Rowan Williams, writes, things are more than they are. This is a lively reality. Okay? So the transcendentals, I don't know if you know the word, things are irreducibly coherent unities. They can only be made by someone else. There's bunches of them that relate to each other. You are a special one because they show up especially for you and say, here I am, at your service, and here's what I am. So the garden chapter, I make the point that welcome of the real is just what beauty is, the event of beauty. Here I am. It's like, here's another problem of this weekend. Not another, but one of them is, you're looking at me when there's that lake out there. It is so beautiful, right? So in other words, beauty is the manifestation of the real.
You are too.
You are too.
Thank you. I'm going to zoot for this, but just at the end to say this is all a festal philosophy. I am a party animal. And I want to say when we get to things, ordinary things bring the party with them. Okay? So, yes, insight is a festal moment when we say, oh, I see it. But to see things as lively, real things saying, here I am at your service, things bring the party with them. So, I'm zooming now to the end. Noble courtesy is what I enjoy in Doorway to Artistry. I had been rereading Lord of the Rings, and Schindler writes, the things of the world have their own noble depths to which we are offered access. And my granddaughters said to me about The Hobbit, they said, the dwarves are always at your service. So I got this idea of noble courtesy, and then I found this incredible quote from Tolkien that he wanted to write a story that was true to his personal aesthetic, in which it would be where a common greeting would be Elaine, Sila, Lumen, Omen, Tie, Emo, which is a star shines on the hour of our meeting. So there's something about noble courtesy that confers regard on the other and invites reality to come. So that's germane to thoughtful conversations as reciprocating The real's welcome. Last slides. Thoughtful conversation is an act of coming to know. Think about that. Subsidiary focal integration, from, to, and beyond. All those things I said about subsidiary focal integration. Thoughtful conversation is knowing as encounter. All that stuff that I said about covenant epistemology. Good practices of thoughtful conversation involve inviting the real. All those cool things. Thoughtful conversation is hospitable reciprocation of reality's welcome, a kind of composure to presence, to being present, holding near and far together, contemplative attentiveness to the other is the place where insight begins. Practicing noble courtesy. And I think this is Festal philosophy. The end of the doorway to artistry is the end, and the end of a feast, there is a wrapping up of things. So a commissioning and a commencement. Well, commencement is the beginning, is a new beginning. It's a new doorway. And so the end becomes a new doorway. And that gives me a chance to say thank you so much for inviting me and listening to me. God bless you and have great conversation.